Hello and welcome to Crazy Talk Analytics. My name is Will, and this is another video in my series that I'm referring to as Excel Scrolls, a most unofficial The Elder Scrolls Betrayal of the Second Era Excel-based simulator. As the name implies, this is very much so an unofficial video featuring an unofficial product. I am in no way, shape, or form affiliated with Chip Theory Games or Bethesda. Also, if this is the first video you're watching on my channel, then I do recommend that you take a look at the introduction video and character creation, and then there are also earlier videos leading up to this point in our adventure, in our session. So we'll be playing just one session of a campaign, which usually consists of 3 sessions, but I do not have enough content to continue on to the next session. So we'll be focusing on one session, which is 12 days, and this video will be starting on day 5. So if you want to see character creation up to day 4, those will be separate videos. And if you're unfamiliar with this game as a whole, then I do highly encourage you to check out Chip Theory Games' official GameFound campaign page, where they basically go over this game very completely, introducing it. Unfortunately, the campaign is over, but the game is available for pre-order on their site. I also want to take a few moments to acknowledge some misplays that I made in the last video. So at the end of day 4, and I may have made other misplays along the way, so please do call them out if you caught any. But at the end of day 4, I defeated a skeever pup that had rot. And rot is an enemy skill that after you defeat the enemy, you have to take 1 over fatigue dice. So I didn't do that part of the step. Subsequently, my rest and recovery decisions were based on not having that over fatigue die. So I've made some retroactive corrections. Fortunately, I can do that as I'm breaking up my days, my playthroughs. So what I had originally done was I had recovered an over fatigue and a combat skill die. So I've decided to change that to acknowledge that I got the additional over fatigue, and I put that combat skill die back in its appropriate place in the cooldown track, and instead recovered 2 over fatigue die. So hopefully that's an acceptable solution to that misplay. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get back to our young Breton Templars trek through Black Marsh as they begin on day 5. So first, let's go ahead and set our day counter to day 5, which represents the appropriate day. We're currently at a party XP of 5, unless I miscounted at some point, but I think that's fairly accurate. In day 4, we had a conflict, so it was sort of a quest-inspired conflict, where we came across a missing sibling who had sort of defected, ran off, and joined a bandit party, and we were able to convince them to give up, abandon their evil ways, and follow us as a companion as we head to a town where we can reunite them with their family. So until the point where we have another town encounter, they're going to essentially be a companion. So we want to keep them alive up until that point. If they die during a town encounter, then we will not be able to complete this quest. So we do want to try to keep them alive. We might treat them a little bit differently as we would some other companion, possibly. Now, I will acknowledge that, so I've made the retroactive change in my rest and recovery to just recover the 2 over fatigue die. Technically, if I did just do 1 over fatigue die and a combat skill die, then this item would allow me to recover my other combat skill die, which is probably a pretty decent decision, but I'm going to hold firm to my decision that I made already to just keep to the 2 over fatigue dice. Also, since that particular item, that miscellaneous item, doesn't really contribute too much to combat, it can if it's in your ready slot, but with my race ability, I can overtax an item and then essentially exchange places with something in my pack. So I think it's more fitting to have them all. Obviously, I think it's a weapon in my ready slot, and then when I overtax that, if that's what I overtax, I can then replace it with that alarm. Of course, I can change my ready inventory loadout at the start of a battle, of a conflict, so it's not so important that I make that decision right now. We will say, just to emphasize, I did make that decision after I turned my day-to-day 5. You can really only change your inventory at the end of the day during the rest and recovery phase or at the start of combat. But because technically we can still make that adjustment, let's just go ahead and let this slide for now. I accidentally deleted the player token instead of the NPC token. So I'm noticing another significant mistake that I made. So a huge oversight on my part. I moved this objective token marking Black Rose Prison. So basically what I've done was moved it 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. And that got me to my party and initiated the quest clash. So objective tokens don't move. NPC tokens move. I missed the fact that this NPC was over in Root Whisperer Village. However, I don't think that there's really any implications in this. As long as I caught it and I correct it, I think we're good. Because this one would have moved 1, 2, 3, and then it wouldn't even have needed the sunny weather to catch up to me. It would have caught up to me regardless. So now we're on day 5. Our weather is sunny. Well, first we trigger the Overland mechanics or start of day effects, and there's nothing at the start of this day right now. If the NPC here, if the NPC token was in the same hex, that would trigger that conflict, but they aren't. So now I get to move, and because it's sunny, I get to move 3 spaces. I have to consider where this NPC token will end up at the end of the day. Rainy. But I'm going to hinge my bets on not getting another sunny, peaceful encounter weather icon. And what I want to do, because I have a lot of stuff in my cooldown track and I'm not really well situated to run right into a conflict right now, I think I want to shoot for this peaceful encounter here. So that's 1, 2, 3 for my Overland Movement, my base Overland Movement, and then I can go ahead and incur 1 light fatigue, moving 1 more space to the plateau of the Traveler, making my way towards Stone Wastes, where I can drop off the Khajiit Bandit sibling and also basically recruit the sellswords. So let's get a light fatigue, and let's pop that back in. So we get the light fatigue, we move down here, and we can trigger the peaceful encounter. Let's go ahead and hide our Overland map. So we get Mysterious Rain. As you set out, a welcome wind is at your back, but when the sky turns gloomy, you know it's not just a change in the breeze. In an astonishingly short span, the darkening sky erupts in a cacophony of lightning and thunder. When it comes, the rain is a hot, stinking, yellow-brown downpour that soaks you within moments. When it finally slackens, a rank mist rises from your swampy surroundings, cutting visibility to mere yards. Simply continuing on your way will be enough challenge for today. Let's go ahead and give this card a flip. So we have 2 options. We're not in an unstable landmark, so we don't have to take the top one, but we can follow the waterway, but step carefully. This is 1 XP. Each adventurer may gain up to 4 light fatigue. Each adventurer who gains fewer than 4 must discard 1 item if possible, and is dealt true damage equal to 4 minus the fatigue gained. All adventurers skip today's adventurer's rest step. So this is something you have to do if you're at an unstable landmark. Again, we aren't, so I'm not too worried about it. Too risky, best to hunker down. Each adventurer must gain 2 light fatigue and exhaust 2 available skill die. Persistent. During your next Overland phase, the party base Overland Movement is reduced by 1, and then discard this card. Unfortunately, that one does put us to flooding, which means the base Overland Movement is set to 2 and then reduced by 1. So we're not moving very far. We can move down to the unstable, or we can take an empty hex, which triggers no encounter. Both of those are fine. I'd probably take the unstable at that point and see how that goes. The benefit of taking option 2 is that if we take a look, we have nothing to exhaust. I may be missing something or not remembering completely, but I don't believe that we have to be able to comply with something. It's essentially we have to have, if we don't have the skill dice, then we just don't exhaust them. But we do gain the 2 light fatigue dice and the persistent effect. So to me, in this situation, option 2 sounds way better because we're basically getting light fatigue anyway or taking damage. So we're going to go with option 2, take 2 light fatigue dice and exhaust 2 available skill dice. There aren't any, so nothing happens there, and then set this aside as a persistent effect. We do get our 1 XP, so we get to increase that, and then we move on to the reward phase. Alright, I do also need to increase my party XP by 1. I'm inclined to keep holding my XP. So after the reward phase, we go to the activate town effect phase. So we are going to set the weather over here to essentially flooding, which reduces the NPC movement down to 1. So they're going to move 1 space down towards me, and then I also can only move 1 space at this point at the start of my next day. I do get to proceed into the rest and recovery phase. So I don't have any health to heal, any HP to heal, but I'm going to go ahead and recover. So I'm going to recover a combat die, and I'm basically going to use this ability here, which is if you recover a combat skill die during your adventure, rest, and recovery, you may recover an additional combat skill die for free. And I'm not going to discard this item for the additional effect during battle, so I'm just going to go ahead and keep that. I believe items are fundamentally reusable unless they're a food, a consumable item essentially, or the ability states that you have to discard it. So I get the other skill dice for free, and I have 1 more recovery. So I think what I'll do is, let's go ahead and take that one. I do like that one. It gives me potentially that extra engage for free. So we'll shift our cooldown. Now I have the option to browse the Blackguard trunk, and this bow is just so appealing. It really is. I know I'm going to be heading towards the town soon. I'm not going to head to the town right away. I can't because my base overland movement is 2 reduced by 1, gives me an overland movement of 1. It's really punishing, so I don't need to worry about that at the moment, and my stamina is so short that the bow is kind of ineffective, right? Because you can't target an enemy adjacent to you with the bow. They have to be at least another hex away, so it's a very limited range for the bow right now with a stamina stat of just 2. Let's go ahead and go to day 6 and do our overland movement. So let's just come down here and see what we get with an unstable encounter. We could move 1 more space here towards the town, but I'm not too worried about that. And we can now discard this card because we've already reduced our overland movement. So let's roll the unstable dice. And of course, I knew we were going to get a conflict. I mean, I think 50%, 3 out of 6 of the sides are conflicts. The good thing is that we get 2 tenacity after this, so maybe it's not terrible. Captives of House Telvanni. Some rogue dark elves have ignored the Ebonheart Pact's peace terms and have continued their cruel raids into Black Marsh. Simply navigating the swamps and waterways has taken all of your focus, which is why one such raider party managed to grab you unawares. You don't know whether you're angry at the injustice of their brazen act or at yourself for falling into their snare. Regardless, the band's leader has a sharp eye and a firm command, so you'll need to defeat him in order to escape. So let's flip this card. And let's just go ahead and make this a little bit larger. So the option is, the locks seem to be loose. Before the start of this clash, each adventurer must make a lockpick check 1, 5, 2, 3 attempts. If any adventurer fails this check, each adventurer must exhaust available skill dice equal to the party size plus 1, which would be 2, and enemies go before adventurers each round. If the weather is flooding, which it is, adventurers have 2 fewer attempts during lockpick checks. I've played this before. I don't have a lot of cards, so high chance of that happening. And it's always been flooding the few times that I've played this. The battle objective is conquer, 3+ players. We don't have that, so we don't need to worry about the 3+ player requirement. So basically conquer, we need to defeat everybody with an XP of 6. That means the EP is 6 because I'm just one player. So we're looking at a 5 and a 1. So we'll get to that lockpick check in a moment, that one attempt that we have, but I just went ahead and got started with the setup. Let's take a look at, I think they're going to appear up here. I want to change that so they appear wherever I sort of set the position to, but let's take a look at our 1s and 5s. So it's going to be, I believe, 1 5 and 1 1. So we get a Wood Elf Marauder who has 5 health, so let's drop the 5 health on them. Group that, and they have dodge and vine snare. Before we take a look at the skills, let's go ahead and drop the other enemy. So this one will go here, that's where the first enemy gets placed. And we have an Orc Marauder, but we need to flip that chip. So we get an Orc Bandit. Orc Bandit has aggressive. So we put 5 health on the bandit, group that, and place it here in the second spot. Both of these have a range of 1, so that's not too bad, and we have a defense of 1 and 1. The 3 combat die, that's kind of the problem there, but they're a little bit further away. I'm going to go ahead and place my party members now. So I've gone ahead and placed myself, my character here and my companion here. So I know there's a legendary cache over here, but I don't want to get too greedy. The lockpick is a little bit harder and it's just a little bit further away. So I'm going to focus on this common cache. High chance maybe I'll get food or something, maybe a useful weapon. And I'm going to try to keep this companion alive so that I can drop them off at the next town. Fortunately, they have a range of 3 and they roll 2 combat dice. They are squishy, but as long as I can keep them away from the enemies, then hopefully it'll all go well. Now we just need to do this lockpick check. So I'm just going to prime the lockpick here, and we'll set that up for 1 5 2. And unfortunately, we just get the 1 attempt. So we get a 1, we get a 2. I have a lot of light fatigue, but I don't want these guys to go first. So I will go ahead and basically take the fatigue to upgrade that to a 5, and the lockpick is successful. Of course, I don't get any items because that was just essentially to pick the lock to escape captive. So it's the start of my turn now. I get to recover 2 dice because my cooldown stat is 2. So we'll go ahead and put this here, and we'll put that, the Daedric Curse there, and we'll shift our dice. And we'll disregard this clipboard error. So I gave it some thought, and I think the way I'm going to start off is I'm just going to move 1 space in. So the Orc Bandit will move 2 spaces to come down to me, and they will attack. And with aggressive, and we didn't do that yet, let's take a quick look at the enemy skills. So we have aggressive, dodge, and vine snare. So aggressive is essentially they get to reroll misses. So after rolling enemy combat dice, this unit rerolls all misses 1 time before dealing damage to its target. And I think it was dodge and vine snare. So dodge, when this unit is engaged by an opposing unit, prevent damage dealt to this unit equal to the number of rolled skill dice that do not deal damage. So you want to focus on damage dealing skill dice, essentially, because that would, you would be preventing damage otherwise. So it's just being mindful of what you roll. And then vine snare. After this unit's engaged, its target must drain 1 available combat skill die. So I think the available means in an attribute and not in the cooldown track. So I can double check that in the rules, but of course the idea is to avoid this from even happening. So I'm going to come over here, and what I'm going to do is roll 1 defense dice. So we're going to change our battle form to defensive, and then we're going to put the combat skill dice here, making it essentially a defense die, and roll. We get a 1, which is hardly noticeable because it's a similar face to what we had. Place that in the active. Being in the defense slot means after I take damage, because I'm pretty sure this Orc Bandit's going to deal damage to me. I can then trigger my Templar class ability to heal for 1 HP. And then I also have this Khajiit Bandit. I think, so this is going to trigger the end of my turn. So we'll go ahead and have the Khajiit Bandit move up. They get to move 2 spaces as they're essentially an enemy unit, and that's what they're allowed. A range of 3. So the Orc Bandit is in range. They have a defense of 1. Khajiit Bandit rolls 2 combat dice. They do have the ability to retreat, which I believe only triggers if a unit doesn't take damage on their turn. So keeping them back probably could have triggered retreat, but I really want to focus on the damage instead. So I'm going to put 2 enemy dice here and roll those. So 1 damage. So unfortunately the defense blocks that. I know the the snipe bow skill or bow ability does not can ignore defense, but I don't believe regular attacks like this can. So we're going to clear that. So as it says, at the end of this unit's turn, if no units took damage, which this is what happened, this unit gains a stealth status die and heals for 1. So they get a stealth status die. They heal for 1, but they're already at full health, so that does nothing. Okay, so now we go into the enemy's turn. The Orc Bandit, actually the Wood Elf will go first because they're level 5. So they go 1, 2. Their range is still 1, so I'm outside of the range. Dodge and Vine Snare, I'm pretty sure they do not trigger here. So this one will come 1, 2. Unfortunately, that does put them in range of the Khajiit Bandit, and I wasn't paying attention to that. So their ability aggressive means they're going to reroll misses. Okay, so we'll roll the 2 enemy die. That's not bad too, so that's a 1 and a miss. So they get to reroll their miss, which we end up with 2 damage. I take all 2 of that damage. I did not say I was going to trigger this Cuirass. I have to learn my lesson, so I do not get a tenacity. This stealth dice goes away when they attack, which will be on their turn. The enemy's turn is essentially over at this point, I believe. So now we're going to start on round 2 and my turn. So we'll clear these 2 light fatigue, remove this, and I almost missed this, but because I started off in defensive mode, I do get to recover 1 HP. I do have a tenacity of 1. I would have had a tenacity of 2 if I had activated my Cuirass, which I did not. I think what I want to do is see if I can't do something where I can spam multiple engagements. In order for me to do that, I would need to move 1 space up here. Now, I might try to keep the Orc Bandit alive and focus on the Wood Elf Marauder because they deal more damage. Plus, I also want to try to get one of those items if possible. And if I end the round essentially defeating these enemies, then I won't have the opportunity to move up and pick a lock. So I'm just trying to keep that in mind as well. I think I'm just going to bring down the hammer on the Wood Elf Marauder. So I'm going to use the Steel Maul, which allows me to, if I roll only a single combat skill die, which is all I have at the moment, then I set the result to 2, and I'm going to overtax because I can overtax once per battle, so that will just move this back to my pack and deal an additional 4 damage and apply a maim status die to your target. We want to go into our heavy weapon mode, take our combat skill die, put it down here, and that's the only thing we can roll if we're triggering that overtax. So my first target's going to be this Wood Elf Marauder for this engage, and let's roll the dice. So I'm going to trigger this ability to set this to a 2. So I set that to a 2, and I do the additional 4 damage that the overtax allows me to do. That's 2 plus 4 equals 6, minus 1 for the defense. This guy is officially defeated, and I can move him off to the side. And my steel maul goes over here, and the enchanted scamp head comes into play. So if I really need to get my combat skill die back, then I can do that. Now that finishes that one engage. Yeah, I'm not going to do another engage because I do want to preserve my skill dice, and I do have that one combat skill die loaded in my active slot, so I will remember to do that. It is my companion's turn right now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my companion move 2 spaces over here to get out of range, and they are going to attack, which means that stealth goes away, and roll 2 enemy dice at the orc bandit. So that's a 3. That is a great roll. Look at that. So the orc bandit blocks 1, brings a 3 down to a 2. And in this case, I always make the mistake of putting in here the damage that was dealt, but in this case, it's the same as the remaining, so that's not so bad. All right, so now it's the orc bandit's turn, and they're going to engage me since the Khajiit bandit is out of their range. Let's just go ahead and clear the enemy skill dice that the Khajiit bandit rolled. So I'm going to activate the House Hexos Curus before the orc bandit engages me. So that's after an enemy engages you, gain 1 tenacity. So I've declared that, and let's just go ahead and add the 2 enemy combat dice. So they hit me for 1 and 1. I'm going to use a defense to negate that. So I only take 1 damage, brings me down to 3, and then I get the 1 tenacity. This is a great item to build up tenacity as long as I'm remembering to use it. So now we're going to go to round 2. Round 3, I mean. I don't think I made any significant misplays there. Let me just go ahead and clear these dice. So I get to recover 2 dice. So we'll just go ahead and clear those out of the track and move this over. What I'm going to do is be like brave Sir Robin and run away. I'm going to go 1, 2. So this is 1, 2, and then I'm going to go 1 more space. I want to do a lockpick attempt on this common cache. I don't want to exit this conflict without getting any benefits from it. So let's go ahead and populate this. So this is 3 attempts. It's a 4-5-1. Not a 51, 5-1. And 3 attempts. 2-6-2. This isn't terrible, but let's roll again. We have 3 attempts. 4, 5, and let's try one more time. A 5. I don't want it that bad. I've made mistakes before of just overloading so much with light fatigue, and I'm not going to do this. I think at some point in time you got to say it's just not worth it, and this is one of those times. So I'm going to clear this, and now my companion gets to go, so I'm just going to move them a little bit out of the way here. I don't know if that's going to work out. They target the stronger opposing unit. That's what that upward arrow means. They do damage multiple targets, but they are going to go for the stronger, which right now, well, I'm at 3, they're at 3, but I get to decide. Okay, so before we move on to the enemy unit's turn, I'm questioning, I know I removed the active die, I'm questioning if I actually reduced my health. I don't believe I did. So I'm going to backpedal here a little bit. When the orc bandit attacked me, I'm going to reduce my health 1 down to 2. I don't know if that's accurate. There's going to be a break between this video and the next session, so I'll watch and adjust if I need to. So right now the health is low enough that it's not an issue, and I did end in heavy weapon form, so for this turn I wouldn't have recovered anything. What I am going to do, though, is when I moved the Khajiit bandit 2 spaces, I forgot that I can trigger their attack. So the orc bandit is 3 spaces away, so there's no reason not to do that. So before I go into the enemy turn on round 3, I am going to activate the Khajiit bandit's attack for 2 combat. We get 2 there. they have a 1 defense, so that brings that down to 1. Now, since the Khajiit unfortunately is at a higher health than me, so the Orc Bandit attacks the Khajiit Bandit and rolls 2 enemy dice. So that is 2. So fortunately they do survive. So their health goes down to 1. Aggressive doesn't kick in because both of those were hits. So now we go on to round 4. I understand I am making a lot of mistakes. I am trying to get better on that though, so just bear with me a little bit. So the start of my turn, I get to recover 2 more dice. This is what I'm kind of waiting for. So now I have just these 2 combat die in here, so I can't actually use them. And I want to move, so I'm not going to go for the legendary cache. And I can't heal because I'm not in defensive mode. So I'm just going to go and move down here. It doesn't matter. I don't need to move right in between these guys. So I want to roll. I think I can maybe get away with rolling these 2. So I just have to take a moment to think about this. So the dilemma I'm facing here is, do I just go with rolling the 1 Daedric Curse that deals the 1 true damage, which is all I need to defeat the Orc Bandit, but there's like a 4 out of 6 chance that it deals the damage, or do I also roll like my bound armaments just in case? So I think because I can do another engage if I need to, I think I just stick with the Daedric Curse, unfortunately. It did roll a miss last time, so hopefully that's not going to happen this time. I do need to shift over to magic form, and let's just give that a roll. So if it's any of these faces, any of these 4 faces, then I get to deal 1 true damage. If it's this face over here at the end, essentially the 6th position, then I also get to trigger. It says trigger 1 of their class abilities that cost 2 tenacity or less for free, and I think one of those. I'll take a look at that if I actually get the result. Restoring Spirit. So let's take a look at that if I can't get the result. So I don't get that, but I do get 2 true damage. That's all I need. So this guy is defeated. Now, unfortunately, because I did move and engage, there's no way I can make my way to the legendary cache this round, and the battle ends at the end of the round. My Khajiit Bandit companion does only have 1 health left, but I did check in the rules, and they do get returned back up to full health for the next conflict, but hopefully I can drop them off at a town before that happens. I get 2 experience points for successful completion of this battle. I can only track 1, which means I have 1 that's not tracked here. Let's go ahead and increase that to 8 to reflect that XP that was earned. So essentially I have 4 XP. I have to track that additional 1 myself. I think I know how I want to spend that. I think I actually just want to go, might sound boring, but I think I might want to go combat die again, because the combat die does give me that defensive measure, which pairs well with my class ability to recover. I also forgot to wrap this up, so we need to move that over to our cooldown track. Fortunately, we didn't get any additional light fatigue. We didn't have to do another engage. So I think I'm just going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and go right into my reward phase. So I'm going to take, for 2 XP, an additional stamina. So that brings my XP now down to 2 because it was 4, although we couldn't track all of it on here. And then I think, so my combat dice would be here, meaning that I would have to spend 2 for an additional 1. Again, this doesn't really represent, there's really a lot more combat die available anyway, so this is fine. But it doesn't show that I've already taken 3 right now, due to having had to restart the program. So now my XP would be cleared, and let's just go ahead and close that down. Actually, this is the one that I need to close down. So the reward phase is over. Just trying to make sure I don't forget anything. So I need to go to the activate province effect. So let's draw a peaceful encounter. Flip it, and it looks like we go to rainy, which isn't terrible. We got to move 2 spaces and incur 1 light fatigue per additional space moved. Cycle that back to the bottom. The NPCs, because it is rainy, they get to move 3 spaces, which was I was trying to anticipate that. So 1, 2, and I'm going to move them here. I have a choice to move them here or here. I guess it doesn't entirely matter because I can still work my way. Yeah, let's just move them there. I can still work my way to this town of Stone Waste easily enough during the rainy weather. So they fall 1 hex shy of triggering their action the next day. Now for my rest and recovery. So for my rest and recovery phase or step, I'm going to go ahead and get 2 health back and recover 2 dice. Now again, because I have this enchanted scamp head, the way I interpret that is I get to recover that 1 combat and then the additional combat die, and then I get to recover for my second official die, the the Daedric Curse. So that fully clears my cooldown track, puts me in a good position. So I'll review the gameplay and see if my HP should be at 4 or 5 here. I know you could look at it like, hey, maybe I misinterpreted it intentionally to avoid taking damage. That wasn't the intent. I honestly didn't want the companion here to die, so I was more than happy to take the damage myself. I have enough ways to sort of heal that, I think. So hopefully I played that correctly, and that I should be at 4 HP. So I'll just go ahead and confirm that by rewatching the video before proceeding on to day 7. But the thing is, now that my stamina is at 3, that makes me wonder if I want this. Increase your range by if this is your first engage of the turn, increase your range by 4? Like, I'm reading that right? That's huge. And then overtax, add 2 enemy combat skill dice to this engage and roll 1d6. If the roll number is lower than your current HP, place this item in your pack instead of discarding it. So if you have a high HP, that's pretty useful. So yeah, I mean, I want this. I do. So I think during my recovery phase, I think I'm going to snag another item. So let's go ahead and put that in here. And that's 1 less companion that we're going to be able to recruit. So we didn't need to have a high stamina to really benefit from that, but it's a bow, so it still helps to have that because you're not always going to be using that ability for, the first engage. You might want to use it later as well. Having that flexibility is good. I also went ahead and changed my ready inventory loadout real quick to reflect the 2 weapons. I got the gloves and the cuirass. Again, you're allowed to do that, sort of rearranging the items during your rest and recovery step. Alright, so I'm still not hitting the rhythm that I want to hit in terms of the playthrough, so I'm still working on that. If you're sticking with me, then I really do appreciate that, especially if you're sticking with me through all my poor narrations and misplays and probably a couple of misapplications of rules. I am working on making improvements, and I think I just have to learn the hard way. Hopefully it doesn't scare anybody away. So please comment, provide feedback, always appreciated. And with that, I'm going to call day 6 officially over, and this video as well. So again, as always, thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.